Mike, I'm gonna go ahead and let you take the floor. I feel like I have a lot to say on this, so but I'll let you start off, and then you can sort of respond to everything that I say too.
Yeah. So the Raiders lost, I want to say 23-18.
Sounds
I
about
don't have
right.
the score in front of me, but um, you know, it felt worse than the
23-18.
score. Yeah, it felt worse than the score even hints. Um, and what it really came down to for me, and this was something that I said a week ago when previewing this game, and this is something that I said after the Broncos game that would be important for this team is the turnover differential. And you might have caught my text message in the group chat, our fantasy group chat, in about probably the early third quarter. I said that the game was over when Jimmy G threw like his second, I think second interception of the game. Um, because I knew the Raiders were not going to get a turnover, and the Steelers were getting all of the turnovers in the game. And of course, they're scoring off of these turnovers. So, the turnover differential 100% flipped the game, and put it in the Steelers' favor from pretty early on. Uh, I mean, once it was 7-7, it was like, okay, fair game. It's like, let's start this game right back over. And then Jimmy G throws an interception. And then the Steelers go score. And then at some point, I think in the third quarter, Jimmy G throws another interception. And I think at that point, they go up 23-7. And I'm like, this thing's over. I don't care what you say. And of course, with like 5 minutes left in the game, I started getting a little bit of hope. But it was very reluctant hope because I was like, we need to score two-point conversions to win this, to tie this game. Maybe it was like 8 minutes left, but whatever. So I want to say it was 23-15. I think that math checks out. I don't know. And the Raiders had the ball on what would it have been, the like 35-yard line or something, and it was like 4th and 4, and we went
So
for it,
this
and we did.
the Raiders didn't have 15 at that point. The
Okay,
Raider the Raiders had I want to say they had 7.
maybe it was 8. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, it must have been 7.
Yeah, it was 7. It was 7 to
Yeah,
23.
that makes sense. Yeah, because then a field goal would have made us down 13. So then theoretically, we could score 2 touchdowns without 2-point conversions and get the lead later on. So I should have took notes on like what the timestamps were and everything, but let's just say it was like 8 minutes left, 23-7, and the Raiders go for it on 4th down instead of kicking a field goal. It was like 4th and 4, and they don't get it. So then the Steelers get the ball, the Raiders stop them. Raiders get the ball, they march down, they get a touchdown, and they get the 2-point conversion, which got a little bit of help from a penalty, which was a correct penalty. Jacoby Myers getting held in the back corner of the end zone on the 2-point conversion. And then following play is, the wide open pass to Mayer. So now we're down 8 points with like, I think less than 5 minutes in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And the Steelers get the ball. We stop them again. And of course, we get the ball. We start going down the field. And we get pitted into a 4th and whatever. And I think we go for the field goal attempt, and then they get the whatever you call that. Oh, the
Leverage.
A penalty, which is so rarely called. And I was just like, are you kidding me? This game is insane.
Wow.
Yeah, this game's insane. How are they going to pull this off? No way, right? But they gifted it to us. So then it's like, all right, first down, here we go. And we find ourselves at 4th and 4 again. And I think this time it was like, maybe it was 4th and 5 on the 5-yard line, right? It was like 4th and goal, 4 or 5 yards out, and out trots Daniel Carlson. And with like 2.5 minutes left and like 2 timeouts, maybe 3, I think it was all 3. We had all 3 timeouts. Now, I have to admit, immediately when I saw Carlson go out there, I understood why. And I know a lot of people are thinking, no, like this makes no sense.
What changed? Agree.
No, nothing. They were just going to kick a field goal. They get the penalty, and then they go waste a minute and a half more, and then it's like, okay, same thing, just shorter distance to the goal line. They still kick a field goal. Why? Because they're down 8. Either way, they're down a touchdown. That sucks. But if they get the ball back, now they can win the game instead of hope to tie the game. Now, granted, you could get the touchdown and hope to tie the game. If you don't tie the game, you're down less than a field goal. And you could theoretically go and win it if you get the ball back. But I understood the thought process, but it was incorrect. I can say that. Because you should just, at that point, the likelihood that you're going to get the ball back, bear in mind you're not going to have timeouts, the likelihood that you're going to get the ball back and be able to go down and score a touchdown off of a punt is so low, especially with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. It was not ideal. I would have gone for the touchdown because, point being, okay, you go for the touchdown, you don't get it, right? You're in the same predicament as kicking the field goal because either way you're down a touchdown. But the difference is between kicking a field goal with Carlson, who will definitely make it unless it gets blocked, and missing a touchdown is either way you need that touchdown. If you score the touchdown and you tie it, I mean, that's the difference to me. It's like you can tie the game here if you just get the right throw or whatever it is, the right play call. But instead it was like, let's kick the field goal and hope to get the ball back. Let's put it on our defensive shoulders one more time because we just got 2 straight drives of stopping the offense for the Steelers. But it was like all game before the fourth quarter, we couldn't stop them. I was just like, I mean, I'm sure you can tell right now, like my head's going back and forth on it. Like I do understand the thought process, but at the same time, it's like, man, I mean, that's tough. You had the opportunity right there. And also bear in mind, if you don't convert the touchdown, the Steelers offense is on the 4-yard line, pitted. And if you force them to punt, you might get the ball on the 50-yard line. Right? But instead you kick the field goal, you kick it off, they're automatically on the 25. And they're moving forward. So that right there is probably enough for me to say that was the wrong decision to kick the field goal. And just the fact that no matter what, whether you kick the field goal or miss the touchdown, you need a touchdown following. The only difference that is in favor of the field goal is that because we were going to get it, and we did, if we get the ball back, and it's a lot of ifs, but if we get the ball back and we have enough time, a touchdown wins the game. No point conversion needed. Like we will likely win the game if we can go down and score a touchdown. But again, that's the massive if. Whereas if you you have the ball on the 4, 5, 6, whatever yard line, and you throw it. Probably to Devontae or Jacoby Myers, because those are the only guys that Jimmy Garoppolo throws to. You might get the touchdown. And then you can do whatever you want on that 2-yard line for the 2-point conversion and pray that it works. But again, the other thing in favor of going for the touchdown, and if you get it, if you don't get the 2-point conversion, you still have a chance to get the ball back and go kick a 55-yard field goal with your kicker that doesn't miss and win the game because you're only down 2. So, yeah, at the end of the day, it was not the correct decision. And really, what I couldn't help but think about was, well, fuck, dude. 2 drives ago, we went for it on 4th and 4 or whatever it was, and we didn't get it. And this was on like the 20-yard line when we could have kicked a field goal and made us down 13 or whatever the math would be. And then when we scored the eventual touchdown after that, we would have been down 6, right? I think.
Well,
yeah,
you would have been down 13, and then you would have
gone for the 1-point conversion.
Gone
so
for the
7
1
more
point.
points.
So 7 more points, and then
so be down 6.
Down 6.
So theoretically, and of course that would change the game completely. Maybe the Steelers play a little harder or whatever. I don't know, but if you're on the 4-yard line and it's 4th and 4, 4th and goal, and you're down 6 points, you're not kicking a field goal anymore, you know? So I couldn't help but think about the 4th down conversion attempt from 2 drives prior when we kicked that field goal at the end. I was like, that could have been that field goal, and then this is the touchdown opportunity, you know? Because I was sitting there like, oh, when they went for it on 4th down and they didn't get it, 2 drives prior, whatever you want to say, with like 8 minutes left in the game, down 7-23. I was like, you can kick a field goal and make it a 2-possession game. Whereas if you don't make this, it's a very hard 2-possession game, aka 2 2-point conversions needed, which is very hard. And the possibility that the Steelers get the ball and they go kick a quick field goal. And if sorry, this might be confusing to follow right here, but okay. The Raiders go for it on 4th down, 3 possessions prior to the end of the game. They miss it, right? And again, 23-7. If they had kicked a field goal and make it 23-10, they are down 13. Let's say the Steelers get the ball in one of their 2 possessions after we got that ball, and they kick a field goal, we're still within 2 possessions. Whereas because we went for it and didn't get it, if they go and kick a field goal at any point, we're down 3 possessions, the game's over. We're not coming back. You know? So, basically one of my main points for this game was, Josh McDaniels' decision-making at the end of the game. And this was something that was kind of echoed maybe exactly a year ago. I think it was week 5, though, against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, I want to say. Maybe it was Monday. But that was the Devontae Adams pushing the camera guy game. Where there was like a very stupid 2-point conversion attempt that didn't work out for us. So this is for lack of a better term, a concerning trend where Josh McDaniels is trying to do, I don't even know what you would call it. Like, I wouldn't call it the smart thing. I wouldn't call it like the impractical. Like, I don't know what the term even is. Like, it might just be stupid, but
he just has lapses in judgment at like really inopportune times.
Yeah, I don't know. In those circumstances, like, at least I can understand the thought process of like, okay, if we get this and if this happens, man, we have a real good chance of, blah, 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 blah. But when you go for something ballsy and like out of the ordinary and it doesn't work, you look doubly stupid. So, yeah, I mean, this was a game where the Josh McDaniels haters, and doubters got to see exactly what they believe to be true. And yeah, it's definitely concerning. It's upsetting. This Steelers team is beatable. They made Kenny Pickett look like Kenny Stabler. Um,
Not really.
no, I mean it's a different era. I'm just saying that
Like
kind of to be a
Kenny
like to
Pickett
joke
just went
around.
out there. Kenny Pickett just went out there. He didn't even win the game. He just didn't lose it. Kenny
Yeah,
Stabler, I mean, was fucking fantastic.
yeah, I know, but it was more of a play on words because their names are Kenny.
Yeah.
But no picks, right? He got the game sealing first down throw. That was a very good play call. I mean, that really was on him. It was more of just, and actually, I mean, if you watched it, remember it. That was when they had Nate Hobbs blitz the quarterback on third down. This is when we needed to, get the ball back and try to score a touchdown. And we still had one more timeout left, maybe two. And it was like 3rd and 2, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 6, whatever it was. And like Kenny Pickett gets the snap, immediately rolls out to the left and quickly throws it to Allen Robinson from the slot, while Nate Hobbs is blitzing from the slot and, doesn't get a good angle because he's immediately rolling out, Kenny Pickett. And you can even hear Chris Collinsworth say, like, wow, like, the Raiders could not have called a worse defense on this play. And you might hear that and think, like, oh, that's really telling on the defensive coordinator. I think what he meant was, like, that was just an unlucky call. Now, granted, I don't think blitzing when it's obviously maybe I'd have to go back and see how many yards the down was. I wouldn't say it was an obvious rushing down. If it was an obvious rushing down, like 3rd and 1, I understand the blitz. But because it was like 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3, it's like they can complete a pass and really put us out of our misery. And you decided to blitz a defensive back. Like, at least blitz a linebacker, So that just sucked to see our nickel blitzing the quarterback as he immediately throws the pass to the slot receiver that the nickel was supposed
Should
to
have been
cover. Not
covering.
supposed, yeah, should have been covering. So our safety had no chance of getting there in time. And that chopped off a minute and a half of game time. That was immediately after the 2-minute warning. And then, they got 3 more downs and then we stopped them, but we got the ball back with 20 seconds left rather than a minute and 40 or something like that. And that's a huge difference. That's the difference between Jimmy G forcing a throw and getting intercepted on the final drive and potentially not taking his time, but we might have had one timeout left at that point. And they could probably go a little more fast-paced, not as long distance, right? And maybe they have a chance. But yeah, what else do I have for this game? I already kind of mentioned Jimmy G's interceptions, but he just didn't look comfortable. He was making bad decisions. He was making some good decisions, but man, like, I don't really fault him on the Michael Mayer interception. He was throwing one. I think that was his first pick. Was one he threw to Michael Mayer. He was under a lot of pressure, and like if you watch the angle where it's like over his shoulder as he's throwing the ball, he puts it in a pretty good spot. As he releases it, Michael Mayer is breaking right. He's doing like a 10 steps forward and then cutting to the right. I don't know what that route's called, but the linebacker just like covered it perfectly, and it looked to me like Michael Mayer was pretty slow, like on his cut, and like instead of like boom, 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 and then turning, it was like he curved off of his cut. It wasn't a cut; it was more like a slowly turning. So once the ball was thrown, the linebacker was like, "Oh, I'm jumping it," as Michael Mayer's still trying to cut. And
It's
then
an
at
out
that
route,
point,
by the way.
out route. So, well, was it towards out of bounds or is that an out route? Like,
Yeah, out route is towards out of bounds. When it's so if you go 10 yards up the field, roughly 10 yards up the field, and you go towards the sideline, it's an out. And then if you go like 5 yards and towards the sideline, it's a flat.
Okay. Well, he was going inwards, like in towards the middle of the field. So maybe it's an in.
So a drag.
A drag. There you go. I mean, it was like 8 to 10 yards upfield, maybe less. But anyways, it was that was the one interception I won't fully fault Jimmy G on, because it looked like a kind of slow route from Mayer, and he was under a lot of pressure. And that was something I expected from the Steelers' defensive line, was a lot of pressure. The Raiders' offensive line had done pretty good the first 2 weeks, but it completely changed in this game. And then Jimmy G's second interception was so god awful. He must have been hearing footsteps or something and just like threw it up for Myers, but threw it way past him. And he had two defenders just sitting there waiting for it, and Patrick Peterson picked it off. And then, of course, the final one on the final drive, like just sailing Devontae Adams, and safety comes in and picks it or whatever. And then my last two, well, actually, I have 3 notes. 2 more negative notes and then 1 good one. Negative note number 1, they still cannot run the ball. And apparently the Steelers defense has not been good against the run up until this game. And that might be in part because of Cleveland, but this was Josh Jacobs' best game, I would say, but it still was not nearly what we expect, at least based off of last season, from Josh Jacobs. He ended up with 17 rush attempts for 62 yards, as well as 5 targets, 3 receptions for 18 yards. So what is that, 90 yards total or 80 yards total? 80 yards. But on 17 attempts, I'd like to see like 80 yards, not 60. His average rush yardage his average yards per rush right now is probably god awful. And I'd like to think that it'll get better as the season goes on, but this is 3 straight weeks of just not being able to develop the run. And there was a point, I think, in the third quarter, it was probably after Garoppolo's second interception, where I was just sitting there, like looking at the TV like this, like just fucking run the ball, just develop the ball, just develop the run, like just try, because clearly forcing Garoppolo to throw the ball is not the way to do this, because he's just going to eventually hear footsteps, thinking that TJ Watt is like breathing down his neck. So he just throws the ball up and it gets picked off. And Jacobs is obviously plenty good. So get him going, get him more carries. I need to see him with north of 20 carries against the Chargers this week. And then my last negative for this game, this was another thing I talked about before, or a week ago and 2 weeks ago, which was the penalties. This team is getting more penalties than I'm comfortable with. And frankly, this team looks like it's coached by John Gruden right now with the amount of penalties they're getting. Here's my thing. I may never, at least as long as Josh McDaniels is the coach, I will never get hyped coming out of the preseason ever again. My God, what a polar opposite. And it's hilarious too, because it's like, oh, the Niners look pretty bad and like their depth, blah, blah, blah. And the Raiders just killed them at joint practices and yada, yada, yada. And the Raiders might have went undefeated in the preseason. No, they lost the last game, but Aiden O'Connell and blah, 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 blah. And then here we are 3 weeks in, and I'm like, I was coming out of the preseason like, man, this team looks like it's so well coached, and like, the veterans that have been here for a year now are like really starting to get in the groove of this offense, and even on the defense, right? And yeah, it does not look good. Again, the amount of penalties that they're getting, I was saying like, wow, this looks like a really well coached team. And I'm not saying that they're not. It's just you can't be having penalties and you can't be giving up so many turnovers. It's just going to lose you the game. I don't care how good your offense is going, unless you're like the Dolphins, paired with a pretty bad defense. I mean, weeks 1 and 3, I saw this defense do something at least that's pretty that gives me optimism, but it still doesn't move the needle for me at all, which is week 1 and 3, they were getting shat on here and there, especially early on in the game. But then when the game came down to the wire and it's the final 8 to 5 minutes of the game, the defense made stops when they needed to. Week 1, that's what won them the game, was getting stops against Russell Wilson. Week 3, they gave this offense opportunities to win the game. They gave Josh McDaniels opportunities, and we saw what he did with them. But that's the one positive I'll give to the defense, other, now that I'm on the positives, than Nate Hobbs. Obviously, Max Crosby. I'm not going to talk much about Crosby because it's given. But Nate Hobbs had a great game in coverage. He gave up one pass early that I was kind of like, really? Like, looked like he was sleeping at the wheel again. Other than that, he looked great. And then Malcolm Kuntz looked really good off the edge. He was getting a lot of pressure in there, it felt like. And then on offense, I mean, the one guy I'll talk about just because he went nuclear was Devontae Adams. It felt like he was open on every play. But other than that, I think that's all I have for that game. I remember saying a week ago that, it was going to come down to the offensive line for the Raiders versus the defensive line for the Steelers, and clearly the Steelers defensive line won in this game. And then I want to say I said the same for the Raiders defensive line versus the Steelers offensive line, and the Raiders got a good amount of pressure, but clearly not enough. I probably also mentioned, like, can they get the run going? And they didn't, at least not enough. And then it really came down to Jimmy G turning the ball over way too much, penalties, and then Josh McDaniels' decision making at the end of the game. Those were the 5 things that it came down to: was Steelers D line versus the Raiders O line, and the other things that I just noted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, so let me get into it now. You pretty much touched on like most of the points that I was going to talk about, so I'll try and keep it brief, and then we'll get to a couple comments. But man, Josh McDaniels, what the hell is that? Like, all right, I didn't like the decision to go for it on 4th down when you're clearly, I mean, what yard was it, Mike? It seemed like it would have been a pretty good field goal, or a pretty good chance that Carlson would have hit the field goal to put you guys only down 13.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is like, say, 8 minutes left. I'm going to, while you talk, I'm going to look for it on ESPN, the play-by-play. But
okay.
I want to say it was around 8 minutes left, down 23
I think it was
to
around
7.
10 minutes. I think it was around 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
There was a lot
right.
there was a lot of football left to be played. So, you kick that, and yes, you're still down. It's still a 2-score game, but it's a much different 2-score. It's a hey, you just scored the touchdown. You don't have to worry about converting the 2-point conversion to now you need both.
Mm.
And so, all right, we see the thought process. All right, you know what? Fuck the field goal. That's not going to push the needle. We need to get in the end zone, score touchdowns. We need, we're going to get those 2-point conversions. Okay, that is the train of thought. Then you go, obviously you don't convert the 4th down. And then on the next drive, you guys scored the touchdown, get the 2-point conversion. And then it's like, okay, 1-score game. You need 8 points. And after that, you guys decide to kick the field goal, and I'm just thinking, why didn't you kick it earlier when there was more time left?
Yeah,
And then
it was 13 minutes left in the game. They were
yeah,
at 4th
what
and
the
5
hell was that?
on the 22-yard line. Yeah.
That's Carlson's bread and butter. You kick that, and it's a different game. It's a 2-score game still, but there's a lot of time left, and you can actually have sustained drives and score those touchdowns instead of desperate drives where you need desperate plays on 2-point conversions.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing.
I didn't like that.
That's
And
the
then
thing. That the main thing that you said there, that is the key to me, is whether they kick the field goal or not, whether they get a touchdown. Well, you kick the field goal, you're still down 2 possessions. But if you don't get the first down, which they didn't, you're not only down 2 possessions, you need 2 2-point conversions. But if you kick this field goal and obviously he's going to make it, you're still down 2 possessions, yes. But now you only need single point extra points, and that second touchdown that you hopefully get, extra point, will put you ahead so long as you can keep stopping the Steelers' offense. And like I said earlier, you kick this field goal. Let's say the Steelers go down and kick a field goal with like 10 to 8 minutes left. You're still down 2 possessions. You're just back to square one. Whereas missing this 4th down, if they kick that field goal, you're out of the game. You're done. So anyway, continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I really didn't like, that they didn't go for the field goal in order to alleviate the need to get the 2-point conversions. And then next thing you know, on the next drive, they get the touchdown they need, and it's still a and then it becomes a 1 possession game, but you still need the 2-point conversion. And then you drive down the field. There was I don't know how much time there was left on the drive where the leverage penalty occurred, but they decide to kick the field goal there when they could have kicked it earlier and had a lot more time left to actually drive down the field and score.
Yeah.
And then they go closer, and then it's like 4th and 5, right? Like 4th and 5, 4th and 6, like on the around the goal line, maybe 4th and 4,
Mm-hmm.
And then they decide, I know we're close to the end zone right now, and I know I didn't want to kick it earlier from far out, and I know this would pin the Steelers back, and we might have another opportunity if we have to make the stop that we're going to have to make anyway. Let me go ahead and trot out Carlson out there. Like, oh my God, what are you doing? That was terrible judgment.
2 minutes and 13 seconds left to kick the field goal on at Pittsburgh's 8-yard line, but it was 4th and 4. So they could have got a first down, and then it'd be 1st and goal with the 2-minute warning.
Go for it. If you don't think that you can get 4 yards on one play right there, I'm sorry, but when you kick that field goal and you don't have enough time left on the clock, you're not going to be able to get 80 yards or 75 yards for a whole drive. And then that's exactly what ended up happening.
Yep. And again, if you go for it and you don't get it, you're still down a touchdown. Whereas if you kick this field goal and you get it, which they did, you're still down a touchdown. The only difference is now if you get a touchdown, which is going to be hard, you'll win the game. Whereas, if you got this touchdown and a 2-point conversion, you tie the game. But again, if you go for it and you get it and you don't get the 2-point conversion, you're only down 2 points. You can get the ball back like you still want to and kick a field goal from 50 yards away and win the game. At not going for it on 4th and 4 at Pittsburgh's 8 is pretty ridiculous. I mean, the offensive weapons you have, specifically Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, you could put Renfro in there. I mean, you could have got it done. So, and I think, honestly, I'd rather lose trying to go for it than kicking a field goal and it's up to the defense now and putting it in the hands of the other team, Yeah,
it's like the Packers playoff game when they decided to kick it against the Bucks, and then, ultimately Rodgers got eliminated that way, when he got eliminated from the playoffs that way. Yeah. He's been eliminated so many times. You pick and choose. If there's a possible way to get eliminated from the playoffs, Rodgers has done it.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing I'll say about the game, aside from like the lapses in judgment, all right, I have respect for Josh McDaniels, but that it wasn't a good like game decision making game for him. Like it was very poor clock to situational management from him.
Mm.
But aside from that, I think Jimmy Garoppolo played very poorly, and oh man, I almost think that I've seen enough out of him. I think O'Connell should be suited up for game days. I don't think it should be a question anymore.
Yeah.
Why is Brian Hoyer the backup? I don't know. Because if Jimmy Garoppolo goes down, Brian Hoyer is not going to win you a Super Bowl. So you want to at least see what you have out of this rookie who at least looked promising in the preseason. And I think Pia's dad's watching. He doesn't like the term rookie, but O'Connell's technically a rookie. So he can actually throw the ball downfield. And I feel like he would have given the Raiders a better chance to win this week. Are you wondering if the train is coming from your?
No, I'm like you made me double take. I was like, is O'Connell a rookie? But he is.
Yeah, he is. He's a 5th round rookie.
Yeah. I think the reason why he's not active is possibly in part because of the new rule that they put in, where the emergency quarterback doesn't have to be on the active roster, not active, but
the game day roster.
The game day roster, so he can be inactive, and then if the first two go down, he can come in.
Yeah, but Hoyer should be the emergency quarterback. I agree. It should not be O'Connell.
100%. And you know what? Well, actually, I'll get to what I was going to say on our next topic. Not to try to rush into that or anything, but there is something to be said about that. But yeah, O'Connell was the one person that I forgot to really mention from this recap, in part because he wasn't a part of it, but yeah, it's telling and a little concerning that he's not on the active roster when I think every week now, maybe week 2 I don't think Garoppolo got hurt, but weeks 1 and 3 he went down at one point in the game. And this is another thing about Garoppolo that we expected coming into this season with him, is at some point, knowing him, he's going to go down. And it might be pure misfortune and bad luck, but it's going to happen. And when that happens, do you really want it to be Brian Hoyer? Not me, the Raider fan. No. I want to see Aiden O'Connell. I want to see what he has. Maybe Josh McDaniels is like, oh, I don't want to put him out there in a bad situation, but it's like, hey man, he's a fucking pro.
It's the Raiders. It's a bad situation. Like, go see what he has. He took the Raiders in the preseason and made it a good situation.
Yeah, and also he didn't even get to throw to Jacoby Myers or Devontae Adams, so that's a pretty good situation to be in.
He did in one of the games, didn't he? Or no?
I don't think
Myers,
so.
yes.
I feel like Myers and Devontae didn't play at all in the preseason.
Oh.
You might be thinking you're probably thinking of Christian Wilkerson because he was just getting everything. And he's one of the fellow dreadlock bearing wide receivers on this team. Mm-hmm. I'm at the point now, with how bad Garoppolo played, and I've seen this quite a bit on Twitter for the Raider fans. Aiden O'Connell needs to be active and ready to go starting this next week, because if it keeps looking like this with Jimmy G, where he's throwing multiple picks, and not only just multiple picks, but like bad decision making on his interceptions, like just floating the fucking ball and just hoping that Jacoby Myers gets there, I would much rather see Aiden O'Connell. And then I couldn't help but think, like today, the day after the game, I'm sitting here like, damn it, dude. This was my one thing with signing Garoppolo. I didn't mind I didn't mind signing him at all, because I was like, you know what? I think of all the quarterbacks that were available at that time, he gave us the best chance to win games. But they signed him to a 3-year deal. And I'm pretty sure the final year in the deal is not guaranteed, but that might have changed because they gave him a sign. They
restructured him, right?
They restructured to create cap space for this season, so they probably put all the cap hit on next year. But for all I know, it could be the next 2 seasons. And because they're like, oh, he looks so great in the preseason or something like that. So are we stuck with him next year? Because I couldn't help but think today, I was just like, dude, I don't want to be stuck with this guy. Like, okay, this would be like the Niners essentially from like the past 2 years, except we don't have a good team. Like, okay, let's say O'Connell gets a chance in there and he just proves like I'm better and I should be the starter, right? Like my one thought today that was positive was like, well, we could keep Jimmy G as his backup for a year next season. But I'm like, but we're paying him like $30 million to be a backup. That's trash. I'd rather go pay a defensive tackle, maybe, but because of the way now that they gave him that, the signing bonus or whatever, the restructure, he's got us against the ropes as far as his contract goes. He could just say, no, I'm not restructuring shit. You signed the deal too, and we can go, oh shit, like nobody's going to trade for him. Why the hell would they? So, it's going to be tough. I don't know. I'm really curious to see how this unfolds a year from now with him. But yeah, I mean, point being, I need to see O'Connell this season, and I know we will. But like, if it's going to be this bad, I want to see him within 3 weeks. Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah,
and that's not what I wanted to say, 2 weeks ago.
So finishing up my thought with Raiders versus Steelers, I think Garoppolo showed that if you put the game in his hands, you're not setting your team up for success. I can only think of one game. Well, actually, maybe there was also the Rams game in 2021, but there were 2 games in 2021 where Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, led game-winning drives. Don't quote me on the Rams game, but I witnessed this in person. Week 3 against the Green Bay Packers, I was there, Sunday Night Football, home opener, and Garoppolo actually, he played pretty bad in the first half, and then, the Niners came back, and Garoppolo led what looked like to be what would have been the game-winning touchdown to Kyle Juszczyk, but they gave Aaron Rodgers a little too much time, and they ended up losing the game. And it was actually a heroic effort by Garoppolo in that game. But more often than not, if you force Jimmy Garoppolo to have to put the team on his shoulders, it is too much weight for him. And I think he's good when the team is dictating the pace and he can just run his dink and dunk plays, and maybe we'll have an occasional bad turnover. Where I really don't like Jimmy is when he's got the ball and the play is going longer than it like the play extends, and Jimmy's like, and then he does like that thing with his feet where he's like stomping both of his feet. Oh God, what do I do with the ball? And then,
there's Jacoby.
He's like, hey, go that way.
Yeah.
Throws it. It's bad news bears every time Jimmy does it. It's his happy feet, just as Chicano says, happy feet Jimmy. It's a bad recipe, it's a recipe for disaster. I think Aiden O'Connell has to be suited up going forward because you have to see what you have out of this guy before this season ends, because you guys might end up with a top draft pick. And you can't be playing that game of, oh, well, I don't know if we should take a quarterback because we don't know. We feel pretty good about Aiden. No, you should know what you have in Aiden. And if Aiden is good enough to win games, then hell, the team you might build a team around him.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I that will piss me off to no end if I see Brian Hoyer on the field for like multiple quarters when it could be valuable reps for Aiden O'Connell and like just reps for everybody to see, the coaching staff, the fans, to see, hey, what does Aiden O'Connell have? What does he offer this team right now? And then what can we see him potentially, growing into? What sort of role could he be a starter? I look at Brock Purdy, look at some of these other quarterbacks, I mean, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, like they were mid-round quarterbacks that are like highly paid because they are successful. Like Aiden O'Connell could be that next guy. He could be, but we have to see.
And if he sucks, you'll at least figure it out. Josh McDaniels, you're supposed to be the genius on offense. You look at the film and you would be able to determine whether or not you can do something, with Aiden O'Connell going forward. It's so funny, Mike.
I'll tell you later. It's funny.
Okay. But last thing, I will end the recap with something positive. One, the positive thing about this game is that, let's just be honest. The Raiders kind of got manhandled a little bit on Sunday Night Football, and it really was not going their way for like the good portion of the game, right? And then one thing we saw is maybe Raider teams in the past would quit. This team kept fighting.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I've seen that in multiple games, it feels like, with Josh McDaniels. And that's the one, like, that is one thing I'll give to McDaniels. And I think a lot of people fail to recognize is like a lot of people have this preconceived notion that all of the players hate Josh McDaniels and McDaniels is hard to like and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, I mean, this team isn't not playing hard for him, It's just a matter of how these games have gone, and then I just don't think this team is there yet, and like I had hopes that they could be there, but I also, going into the season, I did not expect playoffs. I was hoping for playoffs, but really I don't know if I'd say I expect it, but I was very much right there in the sense of I want to see a winning season. I don't care if it's bare minimum 9 wins. I just want to see a winning season. But I mean, if they're going to keep playing like this and the way that they got creamed by the Bills, they're not going to be a winning team. They're going to be another 6 to 7 win team, 8th to 10th pick overall. And if you want to get a quarterback, unless you get lucky and the right guy falls to you, you're going to have to trade up and sell the farm for the future, yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, at least for this team, Aiden O'Connell goes out there and he plays so well that it's undeniable. He needs to be the starter, right? And he wins them games. Like, he's the difference, in games. Go ahead.
Question. So let's just say O'Connell steps in there and does win a couple games. Who are some teams that might not be good that need an upgrade at quarterback? I've got the Vikings, the Buccaneers, the Washington Commanders, and the Atlanta Falcons.
Are you saying to trade for O'Connell or
no.
Garoppolo?
I'm saying that, you're mentioning the Raiders might win in a couple games and then they'll need to trade up to draft a quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and then Chicago, I think you can add them in there now. I think
they might end up they're going to end up with the first overall pick at this rate.
Yeah.
They might fall Caleb Williams right into their laps and then trade
Justin Fields. Yeah. All right, so we've got 5 teams there. Would you add anybody onto that?
So give me the list again.
The Vikings, the Buccaneers, the is Mike getting attacked by dogs in the background there? We don't know. No. We have the Vikings, the Buccaneers. God, God, I just named the names. Why am I brain farting? Chicago, Washington, Atlanta. All right. Who else? So, all right, there's 5 teams there. The Raiders are one of those teams. So the Raiders would have to, I guess, go ahead of, a couple of those teams. Maybe the Jets might draft a guy to put behind Aaron Rodgers when he comes back, or hedge their bets on if he doesn't come back. Anybody else you would add, Mike, to that list of names?
What about the Rams?
Possibly, if Matt Stafford decides to retire. So that is a lot of teams. The Raiders probably would have to trade up.
I could also see, like, this is like the Chiefs type of situation where the Chiefs traded up and got Mahomes when they already had Alex Smith. I could see the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And they also have the draft capital, I want to say. Like, don't they have a second pick this year or no? Maybe that was last year. That was last year because they had the 5th pick from the trade. Well, actually, they should. They should have another one this year for Russell Wilson, right? Could be wrong.
I think it was 2 or 3 first-round picks. But
they definitely got a lot.